welcome to another episode of SaaS Scaled. We have a great guest for this time. Luis has joined us from Orlando, Florida, and the topic is not a topic that we have touched in the past, and it's more about really how to, create the learning management system for organizations. And he will speak about many interesting topics, including how they are leveraging AI. So I would like to welcome Luis to this discussion
Hi, Arman. Thank you for having me.
now. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also what the company does, a little bit also about the background?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I started my career in the '90s as a programmer, as a software engineer, and back then was a very fun ride on that. But it did went through a bubble, and when that bubble ended, I found myself without a job, like many people. I'm different than today when you are a software engineer and you basically, if you lose your job, you go to the next one because every company is a technology company. Back then, it wasn't like that. Only technology companies were technology companies, and so I found myself hired by one of my alma maters, Full Sail University, to build an online university for them. And lucky for me, they thought that creating an online university was just creating a website. And I was good at that, a web application. So I went in and for that. And little did I know that technology was going to be the easy part of building that. But we end up in the founding and building the fastest growing online university in the country at the time. So we went from 0 students to 12,000 degree seeking students in 5 years. To give you a sense of the differences, the campus had 5,000 students, and it took them 30 years to get there, and we got to 5,000 students within 2 years. And then after that, we doubled and doubled again a few times, and we generated 1,000 jobs, launched over 30 degree programs, and the division was generating over 180 million dollars annually. But
Amazing.
tell you all this to tell you how familiar I became with the challenges of digital learning, and I usually like to explain it with an example. If you're in the classroom receiving instruction from an expert that also happens to be a good communicator, uh, then you feel educated. You feel that you're learning. But the moment that you break that time and space, which is one of the benefits of digital education, that you don't have to be in the same place at the same time with the expert in the room, uh, then the materials that that expert has behind him or behind her, they become the teacher. They are the ones that have to do the teaching to you. So they have to be really good, and you can't rely on the good communication skills of that person. And also you cannot ask her questions in real time. And so I end up having to build a department for content development with videographers and script writers and audio people and all that to put together, the lessons of this. And so it is a new problem that digital learning introduced, and uh, digital learning fixed the access problem, but it brought this new problem, and also brought heightened another great challenge in learning, which is the evaluation of learning. So, in simply put, how do you know your learner actually learned? Right? Historically, somebody invented something called tests, and we go and fill up little pieces of paper with different options and things like that. And research shows that that's actually a very inefficient, a very ineffective way to assess learning, because if you don't ask the question properly, or you don't ask the right things, you don't know really what you're evaluating. But it is the most efficient way for the instructor to know. When we went to digital learning, that got automated, so it got even worse. And so the idea of doing effective evaluation of learning, what we call in learning assessment, and is something that hasn't been really solved. So these are the two things that have really been nagging me for a long time. So how do you make content development effective and inexpensive, and how do you do powerful evaluation of learning. So when I left the university, I ended up working there for 19 years. And the last few years when I left, uh, and I came back to my roots of going to technology companies, it was one of those great problems to solve. I paired up with my co-founder in Jacques. Jacques Fu is a very well-known technology founder here in the Orlando area. He was the co-founder of several startups and several exits. The last one was a unicorn. Was a fintech company called Stacks. And as a unicorn, they obviously grow really, really fast, and they acquire companies. And then he took it upon himself to integrate the new companies into theirs. And he thought it was going to be easy. I'll just create some courses and to bring people up to speed. And he said a project that he thought was going to be a few hundred hours end up being thousands of hours, a new department, and all these things I already knew was going to happen. And so when he exited, he thought there got to be a better way to solve this problem. And so he called me out to have lunch, and we talked about this. I told him, yes, I'm very familiar with it. And you also have the problem of evaluation of learning. Creating the content is just half the question. The other half of the question is making sure that people actually learn. And he asked me, do you think we can use AI to solve both those problems? And I said to him, I've been waiting for AI to catch up so that we can solve both of these problems. And so that's how we started.
Great. Now, can you explain a little bit about the role of AI in kind of a scaling workforce development, and how do you think that AI can democratize it, especially
Yes,
for mid-sized and smaller companies? I mean, big-sized companies maybe already have some systems in place, but how can you democratize it essentially?
that, it's a great question, Arman. So as you just said, bigger companies just have the means, right? If you have 5,000 employees and you understand the value of training, of effective training. So what you do, you throw money at the problem. You create a learning department with a learning director and learning managers and instructional designers and content designers, and then you license a learning management system, integrate it into your people platform, do all that investment. It can take you anywhere between, I see it as inexpensive as $500,000 and as expensive as a couple $1 million a year. And you go that route. But if you're a company with a couple hundred employees and maybe just have a couple $1 million in revenue, or maybe $10 million in revenue, but not a billion, not hundreds of millions, and then you may not have $500,000 a year to throw at this problem. And so that's why we build this platform for that kind of company. So how do we give them a platform that can become the training department for them, and that without having to hire a training department? The role of AI was the other part of it. This is only possible because of AI. The AI becomes the technology that enables that, and that allows you to accelerate the content generation, and 5 times faster. Actually, we believe it's about 20 times faster. And in the side of evaluation of learning, allows you to engage each learner one-on-one for true evaluation of learning at scale. See, if I explain this in the real world, if you are in a classroom with people, ideally that teacher will have enough time for you to sit down with you, ask you the questions, let you elaborate, ask you follow-up questions, put you in a situation that you have to practice and see you, and then give you an assessment. And that's not scalable even in the classroom. And that's why we have tests, because it's the only way to do it quickly. So there's never been a really good way to do one-on-one engagement for evaluation of learning, and that's the other way we use AI. AI can actually do it. So we have an engine that can act as an expert. It can act as an instructor. It can act as a customer, so you can practice. It can act as a process, so that you can make sure that you're following it, and be able to do evaluation of learning that is personalized.
And if I'm a SaaS company and listening to you and thinking that, okay, I can adapt to this environment faster by adopting your learning kind of platform to create my private library for my company, for my employees. But I have a major question, that is my return on investment. Nevertheless, I have to make some investments, time, money, the resources, talents I have, that bringing to this equation as well. And how can I see the return on investment? How can you calculate it? How do you persuade a SaaS founder, CEO, leader that this is a good investment on their part to really go and just do it from your perspective?
A couple ways. And usually smaller companies do this, tackle this problem. And once you get into the hundreds of employees, you have to have some sort of formalized training program. You can, because shadowing falls short at that point. And so your first reaction is like, oh, well, I'm gonna take the experts and make them the trainers, right? So the first way that you're actually thinking of your investment is that you're taking the time of that expert and their productivity away from their job, and to make them do this. You always think it's gonna take a few hours, but it doesn't. And ends up being hundreds of hours on that expert, and that's money. That's their time and productivity that you're missing. Hopefully you say, well, when you train the other people, then I can get all that back. But if that person is not really uh, prepared to be a trainer, or prepared to create materials for training and effective learning, I mean, that outcome is really doubtful. So that's one way. The other way is the time to productivity. So, for instance, when I work in universities, uh, you you have to have these advisors that help an applicant through the application process and through the financial aid process. It's very complex, and not only they have to know the regulations about financial aid, but they also have to have, good salespeople skills, and and uh, uh, and also know your products, and which in case university is your degree programs. So it will take 3 to 4 months of training before that person could be ready to talk to an applicant, and then from there another 3 months before they reach peak. If back then I would have a tool like Pete, I would have cut that in half at least. That's real money. This is real money. That from the time you hire the person to the time that person is productive in their job, if you can cut that time in half, in 75%, that's another very tangible return on investment. The other one is that if you do the math into what would it take you to do it well? Okay, I need to hire a learning manager, some instructional designers, I get a license, a learning management system, and all that will take you, as I said, um, uh, $500,000 a year. Let's say that you don't believe that and say, no, I just can hire one person. Okay, a person will cost you, I don't know, 50 grand, 70 grand a year. And that person, I will maybe can be a good training, but maybe not so good on the content, or maybe good. Let's assume it's a unicorn. It's still 50 to 70,000 a year. And our platform is a fraction.
Also, I believe that there would be some topics that maybe otherwise you would not think of adding those topics if you had to do it manually or with real people
Oh,
coming and
yeah.
taking over. And this can expand to many of those topics. So essentially expanding the reach of the learning system, right?
Yeah, the example that comes to mind is regulation and compliance. It's something that you have, but even if you have a learning department, is the thing that they put at the that they dread to do because it's boring. Who wants to be reading regulations and creating courses out of them? And so they it's usually something that they do because they have to, depending on how important the regulation is. Because not training your employees, depending on the industry, on the right regulation can cost you dearly, right? And as Volkswagen, when they didn't train their people on the regulations properly a few years ago. So that's a topic that our platform does so well. It can. So now you can not only create those courses, but now because they are so painful to create, painful to deliver, you can say, well, not only I'm gonna give it to the salespeople or the product people or the engineers, I can give it to everybody because I don't have to go get an expert to deliver it to be the trainer. I can just have the system do it. So yes, we have seen our customers will hire us for a particular purpose, and then say, well, now that we did this, we may as well expand to these other topics, and uh, because it's a lot easier to do.
Yeah, and then also, I think the other you mentioned, I think when you explained that you can also leverage AI to be more kind of interactive and
Yes,
even ask questions and
yes,
even make sure that we not only pass the course or the booklet or the document to someone and trust that that person absorb all of that information, but you can also measure how that was successful and if the person understood all of the points, so the effectiveness can be measured in a way better by this system, right?
absolutely. So in normal training experiences, we have a very wrong paradigm. We tend to think about courses in time. So it's a 90-minute course or a year course, a 5-year degree, but we don't think of them at a level of mastery. So in usually in learning, the time is constant and the learning is variable. So how many times have you been in the same classroom sitting with a with a Saxon person, and you have a complete different level of understanding that the person sitting right next to you, even though you both sat in the same classroom for the same amount of time. So time is fixed, learning is variable. What systems that are personalized are able to do is to flip that, is to say learning should be fixed, everybody should learn the same and master the content, and times should be flexible. Some people will take in 10 minutes and some people will take in 10 years, and I'm exaggerating both ways to make a point, but that is the fact. And so I give you examples. For instance, we have venues are part of our customer base, and they have hundreds of employees that on the day of a game or a concert, they are not full-time employees, they just come to help on that day. They receive very little training because it's very expensive to train a floating population of hundreds of people. So um, so now they're using our software to do that. But part of the training is practicing that conversation. So they will go into an activity, and the engine will be acting as a lost fan. Say, hey, I'm lost. You know what? How do I find a bathroom? And then the person taking the training say, okay, this is what you need to do. But at the same time that they're answering and having this conversation with the fictitious fan, the system will also evaluate and say, hey, when you're given directions, you did not give him a specific landmarks, you didn't give him a specific distance, you didn't reassure them that everything's gonna be okay, and all that comes from whatever the employer wants to make sure that they have as part of their staff. We did that for a couple of venues, and then the safety department and security came in. It's like, oh, can we just train them in safety and security as well? And because now that same person, um, and that when a fan comes in and say, I can't find my child, do that person knows what to do? Can they practice about the conversation of talking to that parent that is terrified that they can't find a child? And so, yes, absolutely. This evaluation, this personal evaluation of learning is a very important component of what we do.
Despite the fact that you make the content creation easier, and you mentioned a factor of even sometimes 10, 20 times better, it's still uh, creating the content never is going to be super quick, super easy. It
Right.
requires some time, thinking, planning. I wonder if maybe you already offer, or maybe that's the idea and vision for the future, to offer something and create some marketplace that people can maybe even share some content. I understand that not every content is shareable, and some of them might be very specific to that company, but there will be some content that probably people may say, this is something that other companies can either take it as is or they can modify it, but it gives them a jump start. Is there such a kind of, do you envision or do you currently offer any marketplace, or do you think there is a need for such a thing?
So there's plenty of providers for marketplace of courses out there, and Coursera, you name it. And as a business, it's a business I don't want to be in. It's a really, really competitive business. It's really, really hard. So, and usually when people come to me as an expert in education and say, I want to start an academy to sell courses to people, my answer is always, don't do it. Let me save you a few $1,000,000. Don't do it. It's been done. It's out there. So if there's something that is cookie cutter enough for you to license, then go do it. It's already been done. And likely there's somebody in YouTube doing it for free. So you don't even have to. And obviously that's just consuming. There's no evaluation in there. But I think that you do open the door to talk about the fact that there's still humans involved, and the fact that you still have to put some kind of effort. Um, we understand this very well, and that's why our licensing comes with a lot of hand holding. So our customer success team onboards the new customer and co-create the first few courses with them. We don't just throw them in the platform and let them go and say, go watch these videos and good luck. We actually onboard that for the first 3 or 4 courses. Our team is co-creating with them, and this have two things in them. Number one is training the customer on how to use the platform, but also training the AI so that the subsequent courses after that are going to give you the output. It's not only the content, you also have to train on the voices of the instructor who's going to be delivering the course. It's important for people to hear from the authority, right? So if the authority is the head of legal, great, let's use his voice or her voice, right? And but we don't want to get that person for hours behind a microphone doing different takes. We just clone the voice, and automatically the system will be creating the narration of the course in the voice of the expert. But after we finish this co-creation portion, we still schedule a cadence of monthly checkups with the customer to make sure that they are getting what they need to, that we don't have to create some new features for them, because we're a young company, so there's a lot of features still that we create all the time for our customers. I like to think that today, in the world that we live, and technology companies go out of their way to not talk to you in person, and just go to the site, download here, pay there, everything's automated. You never ever talk to anybody. We go out of our way to talk to our customers. So education, learning, training is very human. So we want to make sure that we are providing that for our customers.
I'm pretty sure you have seen different organizations, uh, cultivating different type of culture when it comes to learning, and some of them are pretty good. They have built that inside the fabrics of their organization, and they do it even sometimes without, making it a huge task. And it's just part of every day or every week or every month kind of activities that people have in the organization. And some maybe just doing it once a year in a particular way, or
Yes.
they wait until last minute to really do these kind of things. How do you categorize, how does it separate companies that really do learning very kind of infrequently versus the ones that do it very frequently as part of the everyday tasks that they have?
The difference is abysmal. And companies that only do training as an afterthought, and uh, where, as you say, well, maybe we get together once a year and we put everybody there. Learning is a very iterative process. Even when you take a course once, you may not get all the learning right away. You may have to refresh it every so often, and things like that. So when companies take training as part of the core operations, when it's constantly being done, and the knowledge of the workers is a lot stronger, but it also makes for happier workers. We have a statistic we cite in our discovery deck that 90% of companies today are using training as a means to retain their talent. 90%. So it has been discovered as a really important tool to keep your not only your talent the most at the most effective, but also to keep them around. It makes for happier employees.
Um, and in particular with SaaS, in SaaS companies, uh, have you seen anything that may tell you that, with regard to SaaS companies, these are the topics that, for example, you have seen, they are very interested, or these are the style of learning, or these are the kind of, one anything that separates SaaS from the rest of the crowd? If you can, provide us some insight for that segment of the market, essentially.
Yeah, two areas. And one is in product knowledge, and for your sales team, for marketing team, and even to we have some customers that use our platform to educate their customers. And when the platform is more complex, and the other one is compliance and regulation. And many of SaaS companies, and their service has to do with automating regulations, or regulation has to be part of the framework in which they provide their service. And we said this earlier, creating courses about regulation are super boring. And it's a boring process to do, it's a boring process to take, but it's something that you have to do. And so those areas are two areas in which SaaS companies can really benefit from a system like ours.
Fantastic. Luis, I would like to ask you if you could also introduce a book to us, or some books, or any publication maybe, that from your perspective, you would like to share with the peers, and you think it would be helpful to them.
Yeah, I'm looking down because my books are down here. And but yeah, uh, so transversing um, the traction gap.
Hmm.
It's
Action.
become my Bible for everything that I do. I, I'm sure many of your listeners already have know of this book, but it's a book that I reflect to and go back to. Even last weekend, I was sitting down again, looking at because a year or so ago, I was reading the early chapters of it, right? And I read the whole book, but I was focusing more on the early chapters. And now I'm more like in the middle of the book, and I was like, are we doing the right things? Do we have the right systems and all that? So for any startup, and especially a SaaS startup, I think this is a great.
Thank you very much for the recommendation and joining us. It was a great discussion. Uh, wish you a wonderful future for you personally and for the company as well. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much for
much,
joining
Arman.
us.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care.